What up, B Squad? It is me, JB, and we are here today, you guys, with this ain't really a review, but this is a video of sorts. This is going to be me discussing the documentary that was on Investigation Discovery about the Nickelodeon stars from the 90s and the 2000s. And the documentary is titled Quiet on the Set, you guys. So, before I go ahead and get into it, if you guys are watching this video or any other on the channel and you guys aren't subscribed yet, then I need you guys to do me a solid favor and stop taking me out on this date and then having me pay for it at the end of it. You guys know the routine. You can do me that favor by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and also by turning on your post notifications. And with that out of the way, without further ado, let's go ahead and delve into this monstrosity that this mess was. But yeah, let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? All right, you guys, so Quiet on the Set. Terrible, terrible, terrible. So I used to watch Nickelodeon when I was a little kid, right? I used to watch so many shows. I used to watch All That, Hey Arnold, Hey Dude, My Brother and Me, Gullah Gullah Island, Rugrats, Real Monsters, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Legends of the Hidden Temple. I mean, the list goes on, right? So many shows. Figure It Out, Double Dare, you know, stuff like that. I used to watch all those shows back in the 90s. And to watch this, now what I will say about this is some of these shows I didn't watch. Like some of these shows I watched, some of them I didn't. You guys heard me say I watched All That. But I watched All That when, you know, Keenan and Kel, Lori Beth was on there. I watched it when they were there. So these kids that came after them, I did not watch it then. And then I know that they did a reboot a few years ago, but I don't think it still comes. I don't think it comes on anymore. So yeah, I didn't watch it when. Now I did watch it when Amanda Bynes joined the show, but I was never really a huge fan of Amanda Bynes back in the day. But that's neither here nor there. So yeah, and I think for me when I aged out of Nickelodeon, because what happened is, as I got older, there are two things that happened. One was my mom and I, we had just basic, you know, just very basic cable, right? We got the local news channels as well. We just got the local channels, like, so we got one channel two. Well, no, because at that time there I am aging myself. In the 90s, there was no channel two, but then in the middle part of the 90s, they made channel two for us in my hometown. So it was channel two through 21, I believe, because 21 used to be TBS. And so, well, TBS, and then channel 22 in our hometown was the Spanish. I can't think of the name of that channel, but the Spanish channel, and that's where it stopped. And then you could get you could sparingly get like court TV and all that kind of stuff, and that was up until like the 60s. Now my grandmother's TV had all the channels on it, so you didn't miss nothing. So when I would stay with my grandmother, I would be able to watch Nickelodeon and all that stuff, right? Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. Now, as a kid, I wasn't really like into Disney Channel. Now, what I will say for Disney Channel is I used to watch Disney Channel as a kid when there was one Saturday morning. That would be it. I watched one Saturday morning on ABC, and then I would switch back over to Fox Kids because that's where I used to be as a kid. Fox Kids and Fox Kids, Cartoon Network, and Fox Kids, Cartoon Network, and Nickelodeon. That's where I would spend most of my time at, right? If there was nothing on Nickelodeon, if Fox Kids didn't have anything, because you know Fox Kids back in the day, it was Monday through Friday from 3 o'clock until 3 to 4, if I'm not mistaken. It was like a block. So no, it was from 2 o'clock. It would start at 2 and run down until about at least before 5 o'clock, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong. Fact check me on that. But Nickelodeon was all day. I am just talking at this point right now, but yeah. Oh, just the shows that I used to watch. So yeah, that's that. So watching this documentary, I know a lot of people are like, oh, it messed up their childhood, but like I said, for me, it didn't mess up my childhood because I didn't watch some of these shows. Like I didn't watch Zoe 1-on-1. I didn't watch Drake and Josh. Now I will say I did watch Victorious. I did watch iCarly, and I did. That was it. Those were the only shows that I watched. And I will say, by the time that I started watching those shows, I was getting older, so I knew a little bit about, the actuals, right? And watching some of those shows, some of those skits some of those things that you would see those kids portraying, it did make you scratch your head and be like, did nobody realize that was that had a sexual connotation to it? Because I mean, there's this one episode of iCarly. So if you guys don't know, so iCarly, it consists of it's three kids who have a web show, right, called iCarly. So Carly Shay, who was the lead, who was portrayed by Miranda Cosgrove. Then you have Freddie Benson, who is the guy behind the camera, who is portrayed by Nathan Kress. Then you have um, Carly's best friend, Samantha Puckett, who was portrayed by Jeanette McCurdy. Also, Jeanette McCurdy wrote a book, and I empathize with Jeanette McCurdy because she was being abused by her mom, and we see the stuff with Dan. We'll talk about Dan in just a minute. But there's this one episode, and it was actually just on TV. So I want to say this real quick because I agree with what Drake Bell said. Because Nickelodeon put out a statement, and Drake said, but you guys still show these episodes on your network, and that is so true. Because currently, right now, iCarly is on. Now I'm not watching it. I'm watching the Golden Girls. But they still show iCarly. They still show Victorious. They still show Drake and like on Teen Nick and stuff. They show these shows. So there is this. It's called for them. They couldn't say the names of like these companies. Like if like Apple, they couldn't say the Apple iPhone. They call it a pear phone, right? And it was a phone shaped like a pear. But there's this thing called a fat cake, and the character Sam, she went to the fat cake factory, and she had the fat cake in her hand, and she licked it, and I was like, oh God, that's kind of weird. It's very, like, some of the things that I saw on that show, I did find them to be quite weird. And it's just like, so nobody behind the scenes were like, these are kids. No, these are kids. Now, by this time, I don't know what season this was where this show was airing, but I know by the time when she first started, she was a young girl. Like all of these kids were teenagers when they started, and so they just grew up on the set. But it's just like nobody behind the scenes said anything about this, and we see why nobody behind the scenes said anything about the shit, because if you watch the documentary, so it's 5 parts in total. They've only shown 4 parts on television. There's a 5th part that is going to be coming out in next week, I believe. I can't remember the exact date, but there's a part 5 that's coming out, and that part 5 is going to address the stuff with Drake Bell in deep detail, because part 4 ended with Drake talking about the guy who, we'll talk about that in just a minute, the guy who abused him. That man only got 14 to 16 months in prison, and he has to register as a sex offender. But we'll get into it. But the first 2, I know for at least the first 2, and some of the 3rd part talked about Dan Schneider. So I knew who Dan Schneider was. And if you watch those shows at the end, like when you see the production companies, they'll show his little production company's logo, and it was him. So, like I said, all that, I used to watch all that all the time as a kid. I loved all that. And it's so interesting because I remember as a little kid watching all those shows, all that, Figure It Out, Double Dare, all those shows, all that, where they had kids who looked like me on there. And I knew as a little kid that I wanted to entertain people. I wanted to act. I wanted to do this stuff. And my mom would have helped me, but I am so, because as a kid, as I got older and the internet became a big thing, I was able to look up stuff. Like I was able to look up, production companies, labels, and all that stuff. And I knew them, and I wanted to send letters to them and send audition tapes and everything to them. I'm so glad that I didn't, and I'm so glad that I didn't, especially seeing the way that the black kids were treated. That boy Brian Hearn, the way that he was treated when they had the dogs licking the peanut butter off of him, right? When they also wanted him to charcoal, I was like, that is blatant racism. And then what else was it? They wanted him to dress like a fetus, and I'm like, a fetus? And you saw the costume; it was mesh, and I think he only had on some underwear. So it's like you're sexualizing a child. Terrible, 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 terrible. His mama protected him, and I think that's one thing I did kind of notice with this special. Some of the parents didn't protect their kids. Speaking of parents who didn't protect their kids, let me get on this real quick because Kyle Massey's mama came out this week and had something to say that blamed the parents because she wanted to thank Dan Schneider. I was like, "You're weird, lady. Your son, Kyle had a case against him, right? Didn't Kyle have an inappropriate relationship with a child? If I'm not mistaken, didn't Kyle have one, right? Yes. Then your other son, now he did come out and say that his mama can't speak for him, but let's talk about that son. That son has an abuse case against him as well. So, good job on the parenting, ma'am. Like, lady, shut up. So, we had that. Now, like I said a few minutes ago, when it comes to the Brian Hearn and the girl Giovanni, I don't know them because if they came on, so I think I stopped watching Nickelodeon just before the 2000s because then I switched over to the Disney Channel where I used to watch Even Stevens, Lizzie McGuire, Kim Possible, That's So Raven, and those things. Now, anything past that, I didn't watch. Speaking of the Disney Channel, let's talk about that real quickly. So the guy that abused Drake Bell, they hired him on the set of The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. By that point, he was already a registered sex offender. And I was like, so nobody, I mean nobody, did a background check into him? That is horrific. Then let's go back to Dan Schneider real quick. Dan was so weird. The fact that he had people on the set giving him a massage, that is so inappropriate. The way he treated the women, you can't tell me he likes women. I'm not saying anything about his sexuality. I'm just saying that man hates women. The way that he talked to the women, he wanted them to yell out, if he would type something on the computer, he wants them to yell out slut. He would make them yell it out. And then he made those two women share a salary. And when that woman I think she went to SAG, and they told her that's not how it's supposed to be. And when Dan found out, he asked her, was she basically conspiring against him? I would have been like, no, nigga, I'm not conspiring against you. I'm trying to get my just due. Like, Bill, and then he wanted them to work for free. And that was the other crazy thing, right? The women who had the accolades to do these jobs, he treated them like shit. But then he would bring in men who weren't even qualified for these jobs, give them what the women deserve as pay. It's just like, oh my God. Speaking of Dan, so I don't really keep up with things like this, but I don't keep up with people who do interviews. That's what I should have said. But Dan Schneider did an interview. I think it was with, I don't forget which publication it was with, but he did an interview this week with the guy who played on iCarly. His character's name was Tebow, and I was like, okay, so you see all these things. Now he did apologize. He did say that he did take accountability for the massages, but then in the documentary, everything that they were saying in the documentary, he has a rebuttal to it. He didn't do this to the women. He didn't do that. He didn't do this. He didn't do that. He wasn't let go from Nickelodeon. So what did you do? Just part ways with them? Now I will say that they said they gave him $7 million. I was like, wow, that is a lot of damn money to just part ways with the man. But listening to the first two parts, Dan was a terror. And then we really, I think, in especially in episode two mostly talked about Amanda Bynes, and for me, I really, like I said, I wasn't growing up. I didn't necessarily like Amanda Bynes like that. I wasn't the biggest fan of hers, but I will say though, from listening to this and watching this and seeing what's happened to her, knowing her story, it's very tragic, right? And I felt so bad because it makes sense why she's gone down the path that she's gone down, because the people in her life, Dan was using her. He wanted her to get emancipated from her family, but it didn't go the way that he wanted it to. And so you guys know she was on all that. Then she did the Amanda show. Like I said, I didn't watch the Amanda show. I never watched that show because, let me say this. I think Amanda Bynes, I thought she was funny. As a kid, she was funny. But she was also, to me as a kid, very annoying, right? Just never a fan of her show. But I can't take away from the fact that she was a funny, funny girl. The only time I've ever followed, no, I've never followed her career. I didn't know that the show What I Like About You, he was on that, because I was like, oh, I remember when she did What I Like About You on the WB at the time, right? Because there was a girl, I don't really knew about that, is because there was a girl from American Idol who I was a big fan of. She did a guest appearance on What I Like About You, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm gonna watch the episode. So I watched the episode, and then but the things that he did, it's just like, when it comes to Amanda, he 100% groomed Amanda, and it is just, but you can definitely see, I think you can kind of see why she spiraled the way that she did. So that was part two, and like I said, part three, episode three was still talking about Dan, but it was like half Dan, and then we got half into Brian Peck. Also, the Jason guy, super duper creepy. So here's another thing. I find it odd when I just don't know what goes through a person's brain to find a child attractive in any light. In any light, to find a child attractive, actually or just romantically. How does your brain compartment, like, how do you come up with that in your brain? How do you justify that? So that Jason guy, I think he was already a sex offender, and they didn't do a background check on the man, and so he was sending, oh God, he was sending videos to kids, pictures and videos to kids. One, he sent a video of himself pleasuring himself and said, I was thinking about you. And I think it was to an 11-year-old little girl. And it's just like, oh my God, that is nasty. Ugh. How do you get a kid? A kid. It is a child we're talking about. A child. Then, so remember I told you guys I didn't watch Zoe 101, right? So I would have never saw this one. But when you see it, so I'm bouncing all over the place, and I know that I am. In Zoe 101, there was a scene where this girl had to open up this thing with her mouth, and she couldn't get it. So what they did was, it was a prop, right? So the prop was she couldn't get it open. So they then switched it to the one that was open, and she squirt whatever liquid is in it, and it hit what's her name in the face, Jamie Lynn Spears, and it was just right here in her face, and they were like, "It's a shot." I was like, "Ugh." But I think what it is, the reason why most of those adults who were behind the scenes didn't say anything, it was fear, and it's really sad that, it's really sad. But I'm so happy for the Me Too movement, because with stuff like this, they were afraid to say anything. The women or men were, I don't know if the men were afraid to say it, but I know the women were. The women were afraid to say anything because of, you know, the treatment that they're already experiencing at the helm of Dan. So they feel like if they say anything, then it's gonna tarnish their career. They won't be able to get a job. So, and you know, the bills don't pay themselves. So I understand why they were fearful, but my God, nobody protected the kids. Nobody protected these kids. And then, so with Dan, I knew something happened to Dan, and I'll tell you guys when. I actually just found it out last year, to be quite honest with you. So you guys know that they made a Good Burger too, right? I watched the original Good Burger. I love the original Good Burger. I still have it on VHS today. So when Good Burger 2 came out, and I realized Ed was running Good Burger, I was like, so where is what was his name? Mr. Sweet? I forget what the guy's name was, what the character's name was, but I was like, where is the owner of Good Burger? And then I got on Google and I Googled Good Burger, and I clicked on Dan's picture, and then I found that Dan had been, removed from Nickelodeon, and I was like, oh, okay, makes sense, right? But again, I didn't even do a deep dive to realize why all this stuff happened with Dan, and it's just despicable. It's despicable, despicable, despicable. Then we go even further, and we get into the things with Brian Peck. Here's another thing. Everything that I saw in his documentary, every skit, it's like, who are you doing? Who were they marketing this show towards? Because it seems like it was marketed towards adults, because all of these things are adult themed, literally. Like those scenes with Ariana Grande where she was trying to put her foot in her mouth. She was pouring the water all over her. And she was trying to fit her fist in her. I was like, this is weird. Then you get the scene where Brian Peck is playing Pickle Boy. And also where she was trying to squeeze the big ass potato to get juice from it. I was like, now y'all know what that looks like. Y'all know that looks like a hand, J-O-B. Like, y'all know that. How? How did they get away with that? Like, the crazy thing is, with these shows, they record them and you have to send them to the network for final approval, and the network still approve these. My God. My God, my God. And there was this one scene with Pickle Boy. I think it was, what is his name? Romano. His last name is Romano. He was on, God. Oh God, I can see his face as clear as day, but I just can't remember what his first name is. Raymond show, whatever that show was. I can't think of his name. Raymond Romano. That's his name. Raymond Romano. So there was a scene where Pickle Boy went to Raymond Romano's dressing room and slid a pickle through a hole in the door. Now, if you guys are not familiar with what that insinuates, I'll explain it to you. And I'm trying my hardest not to be as graphic, right? I'm gonna give it to you in clean terms, right? So think of a male. Think of myself, right? And you go to. There are places people can go to, right, for adult-friendly time, right? There are. I can't say those, but there are places that men and women can go to have fun with each other, right, in the adult capacity. And me as a man, right? Y'all know my member. So just don't visualize that. Just think like, okay, there's such a thing. you can have there's a barrier between you, right? Where the other person you can't see that person can't see you, right? So this is strictly anonymous. So you can put your you can put your remote through the hole, right? So the person on the opposite side can either your remote or they can insert it, you know, if you're a woman, you could insert it, you know, in one way, and if you're a man, you can only insert it in the other way. So you can, you know, you can do two. It's two barriers to entry, right? But yeah, so that's what that scene. And I sat there and I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Pause the pump the brakes. Again, nobody saw any issues with this. I was dumbfounded when I saw that scene. And then with Drake Bell, oh my God, I really felt bad for Drake because one, this guy came between his relationship with his father, telling him his dad was stealing money from him, right? Then on top of that, his dad noticed that the man was always around, touching on him, you know, helping him put his clothes on. And so his dad went to production to tell them like, yo, Brian is getting a little too close to Drake. And they were like, oh, you know he's gay, right? And I was like, what the hell does that have to do with the price of tea in China? He's gay. That doesn't mean he gets to fondle my child. He gets to inappropriately touch my child. So that, like I said, drove a wedge between Drake and his dad. And so Drake went and stayed with his mom. And his dad told his mom, by no means let him be alone with Brian. And unfortunately, that happened. And so Drake was like, you know, one night he was slept on the couch and he woke up to Brian assaulting him. I was like, I know you're lying. And it kept going on. I don't know if he said how long it went on, but it kept happening. And then he talked about the fact that, what else did he say? He had a girlfriend at one point, and so Brian kept calling his girlfriend's house. He called his phone, called the girlfriend's house, and his girlfriend's mom was like, it's not okay that a 40-something-year-old man keeps calling my girlfriend, my daughter's boyfriend's phone. It's not. So he went to counsel. He went to their therapist, and he just let everything out. He told his mom, and so Brian had to go to, you know, they got Brian on recording about what he had done to Drake. What got even worse was when the fact that people wrote letters in defense of this man. And people wrote letters defending him, blaming Drake, saying Drake was enticing him. I was like, you've got to be shitting me. You've got to be playing a game with me. This cannot be true. Y'all blame a kid when this is a 40-year-old man. How do you blame the and the man, he was abusing Drake. I don't care. There's nothing you can say that can make him the villain. Like, he's a victim. It was disgusting to me. Absolutely disgusting. Oh my God, my God, my God. I just feel so bad for those kids. I really do. And I thank God that, you know, like I said, I wanted to do that stuff, but I'm glad that God and my mama. But if I even were on some of these sets like this, my mama would have been like that boy Brian's mama. Not Brian, but oh yeah, his name is Brian. My mom would have been just like his mama, and I would have got fired just like him, because he thought he was coming back for a third season, and they said nope, because of your mama. But I mean, oh my God, it's just horrific, horrific, horrific. But if you guys watched it, let me know what you guys thought about it down in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, you guys. Turn on your post notifications, and also share the video. And until the next time, you guys, stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves. Wash your hands. Be blessed, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.